Okay, welcome everyone to the May 2022 Aerobridge webinar. If you are new to Aerobridge, Aerobridge is a drone operations management server, and it is also an open source community. We meet every Thursday at 8 p.m. India time as a weekly call, and then the best way to engage with Aerobridge is to go to aerobridge.io, and then there is a link to a Slack channel, and you can engage there. We have about 150 people now, engineers, people in the drone industry who are interested in working together in Aerobridge. This is an open source project, and what we're going to present today is basically progress that we have made since February. So if you're new here, perhaps going to the February webinar recording and then doing this is the best strategy that I would recommend to you. And this webinar, we are going to focus on one aspect of Aerobridge, which is the solution for drone assembly and supply chain management. Just a little bit of a background, Aerobridge is a slew of projects, is one of the many projects that we built as Open Skies, the company I founded. Some of the more notable ones are Flight Spotlight and Flight Blender, which work with the network remote ID as per ASTM, and of course some of the use-based regulations coming up now. And then Aerobridge is, of course, focuses on trusted flights and supply chain management for drone assemblers and manufacturers. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But if you go to the GitHub page, you will see some of the other projects that we maintain and run as well. Now, the fundamental thing that Aerobridge enables is if you are a hardware manufacturer or an assembler, it gives you control over various aspects of flight operations. And we call this stack trusted flights. Basically, it means that you can have control over what can be run or not run on your drone. So it is secure not only for your customer, but also against them as well. So conceptually, what does it mean? It means that you can control who is flying the drone. You can link identities to them. You can sort of have a good visibility on where and who has made the drone, what components are in them, can we trace them, and so on. And then finally, what technology is being used? Can you trust the code and the technology? So in our previous webinar, we talked about this from an autopilot point of view. We talked about this from flight permissioning and permissions point of view, and so on. So I would recommend you sort of go to that webinar a little bit as well, just to get familiar with all the features that Aerobridge has. And today we're going to focus on this particular component called the assembly and manufacturing. So this is a webinar mainly for drone assemblers and manufacturers. Now, this is what the stack looks like. At the bottom, you have customized versions of Autopilot, PX4, and ArduPilot. So there are links to that. And then we communicate with these autopilots via QGCS. We have a customized build for that, or directly via Mavlink, if you are sort of into that. And all of this is managed via a management server, which is installed on your company's premises, or we can host it for you, called Aerobridge. So essentially, there is a management server, a Mavlink interface, and the autopilots, and together they form this trusted flights module. And I'm going to show you how some of these things work together today. So Aerobridge started about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And when we started with the manufacturing management server. But eventually we started to build our own drones. And we have, if you are new, we have a drone called F1, which is a very basic quadcopter, and we call it this open UAS architecture. What does that mean? That means that we have opened up the build of the drone, where you can see the components and sort of the kind of things we are using to make the drones. And then you can assemble it yourself, and then, of course, manage it, all of it by yourself as well. So this is first of the many of these drone designs that we are going to open up. It's called the F1 Small UAS. And if you go to f1.aerobridge.io, we can go here and take a look. This is the F1 mapping drone. There are some performance parameters. In the last webinars, we have shared some of these things with you. But the idea here is that we have 13 components, and essentially, if you can procure these 13 components, you can then assemble a basic quadcopter and do some very basic mapping operations with it as well. So what do these components look like? So if I just sort of search one of these, it will take me to a website like this, and then you can sort of try to procure it yourself. So basically, the idea is you will have to buy these components and then assemble it yourself. Or sometimes we do it for you as well. The point that I'm trying to make to you here is that this is a very basic quadcopter, but if you have a specialized drone for yourself, for example, a fixed wing drone, or a drone that does agricultural spraying and so on, you can customize it for your own bill of materials. And so we're going to use F1 for this little webinar that I'm going to give, but know that these can be customized for your drone as well. And we have opened this quadcopter build for you. So let's talk about building these drones and sort of what you call as a drone assembly and supply chain. And here we are talking specifically about small to medium drone assemblers. So this is not like a very giant factory which produces hundreds or tens of thousands of drones. This is more like a 2 or 3 or 5 or 10-man shop building, anywhere from 1 to 25 to 50 drones or something like that, like a fleet of drones. And they look like what you see in the picture, a workshop with some components and electronics and so on. And what we're really trying to do is to build solutions for drone assemblers and manufacturers at this scale. These can, of course, be expanded to more larger operations, but that's not what the focus is of the community at the moment. So we are building tooling for these type of operations, SMEs who are trying to build and assemble their own drones. Sometimes these are manufactured in-house, some of the parts are procured, and so on. So you have this situation where not everything is bought online. They have capability to sort of install and fix and repair some of these. So we are really tailoring what you're going to see for these type of small manufacturers, or what do you call as SME manufacturers. And the real issue here is that inventory and supply chain management is very difficult at this level because the existing software is maybe too expensive. It is not really suited for drone assembly. The compliance and record keeping against this is sort of a little bit challenging, particularly inventory and stock taking. They're usually in the minds of these engineers or in an Excel spreadsheet somewhere. And then, of course, a proper way to manage bill of materials, series, change of parts. Last year you used this propeller, this year we're going to use this propeller, and so on. These type of things are very, very problematic and challenging and really are fully, let's say, manual when it comes to these manufacturers. And also, the supplier management is essentially in the minds of these assemblers. So somebody would know that you would buy a blade from here or a motor from there, and then basically they leave or they decide to do something else or not available on the day, then you have huge problems with managing your suppliers and placing orders and so on. So this is the real problem that we are going to sort of address in this demo. Essentially, because the existing software is very expensive and cumbersome, most people use Excel or just, like notebooks and so on. And what you will see now is a piece of software in Aerobridge which is integrated with Trusted Flights. So what you make and what you fly and how you fly it is all integrated. And then it is lightweight and sort of specially made for these drones. So let's just jump right into it. I am in what is known as Aerobridge test flight. This is our latest source code that we have this on the test server. So you can take a look at aerobridge testflight.herokuapp.com. There is an API and so on, but let's just take a look at the test flight. And this is the real sort of front end for Aerobridge. There are really 4 things: operations, trusted flights, data lockers, and manufacturing. We're going to focus on the manufacturing side a little bit, but know that for trusted flights and so on, the permissions, you have to take a look at the older webinar. There's also a data storage component for secure storage and so on. And then you have the operations and so on. So in this sort of a little bit of a demo, I'm going to play the role of an assembler. And I assemble drones and call them Aerobridge drones. And this is the name of the company, Aerobridge Drones Limited. So if I go to the manufacturing and I see the models, here you will see the F1 drone. As I said to you earlier, the F1 drone is one that we recommend as a basic starter drone. And here is, for example, the 13 bill of materials for it. Now, The F1 drone can be seen here. It is the Series 2022. So if I click on it, here you will see obviously the name, the popular name, and then here you see a firmware link. So we are linking these firmwares to the drone via the server. And then, of course, you have what we call as the master components or the blueprint of the component. So these 13 things make this drone, and this is the digital record of that. So let's take a look at the battery. Here you see that's the master component detail. You can store things like drawings, product information, all sorts of documents that you can imagine, pictures, images, and so on, which is you would expect in a sort of a supply chain thing. And then also you have this sort of documentation on who's manufacturing it, who is supplying it to us, and so on. So you have one suppliers, of course, you can have many, and so on. And in the manufacturers, you can start to see, for example, what they have, documents they have, maybe product sheets and so on that you can store with it as well. So as you can see here, you're already getting into this BOM management and supplier management, bill of material management and supplier management, and so on. So here's my my series, and here's an assembly. So now once I start assembly, you can see that essentially you don't have any ongoing assemblies, but I have some completed assemblies. So here is a record of past assemblies that I have done. I have assembled 2 of these F1 Series 2021 drones, and if I click on any one of them, they can see that the assembly status is complete, and these are the parts that are in it. So you can start to see when these assemblies were completed and what parts are there in it. And so if I go to my trusted flights and aircrafts, here are the 2 drones, the F1 number 1 and number 2 drone. And here is the details of it and so on. So essentially, you can start to sort of have this very precise control over what you have assembled, when was it assembled, when was it installed, and so on. So normally this would go in an Excel or something, but you now have a server for all of this. So if I go back to my models and I say I want to create a new assembly, so I want to build a new drone. Now, once I press that, as you know, for the F1, I need 13 components, right? But here you have this warning sign, which means that I don't have any components in my inventory at the moment. To build an assembly, I will need all 13 of them. And if you have some components, then you will see them checked or something. But the idea here is that you can start to keep track of what you need to make a drone. And so I can, for example, go here, I need a battery, and I have to take it from this DIY robotic supplier. So you can imagine, for example, if you go to operations and companies, here are the manufacturers of my components, and here are the suppliers, and so on. So I can start to have a list of suppliers, manufacturers, operators, assemblers, and so on. So essentially what you can start to do is to map out your entire supply chain using these. Now, if I go to the models again, I say I want to create an assembly. Look what it says. There is no components available. Check your inventory or order new ones. OK, so how do I do that? So if I go to my battery, here you have order more or check stocks, or if I can go to manufacturing stock keeping, here you see all the things that I have. So for example, I needed a GPS. I have 2 in stock. They are installed on these existing drones. And now I can start to say, well, because this GPS is supplied by this aerial robots company, I can then order it. So in the future, you can imagine a buy now button and so on, which says, well, you need 1 more because you are trying to build 1 drone. So then you can order them now, and so on. And so you can start to do these type of things as we build this out, right? So you have sort of a list of suppliers, and you can have essentially more ordering, and we can imagine an API that says, well, this part is available for €5 and this is for €10 and so on. And so maybe the order dates are different and so on. So this notion that you are now building out this automation is what makes this interesting. So for the moment, we have stock keeping and we have production, which is basically associated with the assemblies. And then, of course, we have the link to the firmware. So as you sort of release new firmwares, you can link it to the drones and so on. And this will be sort of built out in the coming months. So that was a brief walkthrough of the manufacturing features within Aerobridge. And essentially, as you get into this new world of drone manufacturing and new regulations around it, such as the NDAA in the US, you will need to demonstrate what's in the drone, where did you get them from, who's flying it, and so on. And for that, these types of solutions should help you as a small assembler and manufacturer scale up your operations in a systematic way. Of course, this is just the beginning. We have a lot of ideas planned out for manufacturing. If you have something that is sort of burning from your side, please let us know. Again, the way to do that is to go to aerobridge.io and join the community. There is a link to a Slack channel, and then we can sort of start with that. Just like the F1 drone hardware that we have with the bill of materials, we are working on some additional drones, so you can have this mix of small drones, big drones, fixed wing drones, and drone types, and so on. And that is essentially it. My name is Rishi. I lead the Aerobridge community, and I'm the founder of Open Skies Aerial Technology, which is the company that sort of runs Aerobridge. And you can see me on Slack. Again, if you go to aerobridge.io and sign up on Slack and just join the conversation as we build out this whole feature set for small assemblers and manufacturers. With that, I conclude. Thank you.